Greetings, YouTube. Today I'll be talking about the character, one of the characters from the Deadpool 2 film. So if you have not seen this film, there are spoilers here, and I don't want to ruin that because it is a bit of a surprise if you know nothing about the film of who is in it. So if you have not seen Deadpool 2 and you not want the little bit of surprise that is there, because I didn't know about it, I didn't know that this character is in the film. So if you don't want that spoiled for you, don't watch this video. Okay, good. Let's go. In Deadpool 2, one of the big reveals is the monster in the icebox, which is a maximum security prison for mutants. And the monster is Juggernaut. Now, I always find Juggernaut kind of an interesting character because he is kind of a one-trick pony. He's strong and tough, but his thing is that when he starts moving forward, it's pretty much impossible to stop him. And in the film, he goes head-to-head with Colossus, which is very cinematic and was a lot of fun to watch. And you got to see Colossus maybe not be so much of a Boy Scout as how he's been portrayed in the films, at least. In the comics, he seems to be less of a Boy Scout. But he's been portrayed pretty much like as a Boy Scout in the films. And so he kind of like gets a little looser here and plays a little more dirty, which was pleasant to see. And that was fun, but it was also not strategically all that wise. You get a big tough dude and you throw another big tough dude against them, they're just going to beat each other and cause a lot of collateral damage. Now, Juggernaut is cool, but he's not invincible. And I can't quite figure out why the prison allowed him to wear his big helmet. Why did they do that? That's the reason that Juggernaut wears the big helmet is that, at least in the MCU films, I have the comics, I'm not going to say I know all the details, because I don't, is that the helmet prevents his half-brother, Professor Charles Xavier, from reading his mind. Why he thinks that the professor wants to read his mind 24/7 is beyond me. I think that may be a bit of a tell as far as the anxiety and PTSD that Juggernaut is experiencing. But why would the prison allow him to keep that helmet? The prison doesn't care that his half-brother reads his mind. They're not putting helmets on anybody else on the planet. For some strange reason, they let him keep it. That made zero sense. Oh, as an aside, they put Wade Wilson, Deadpool, in this prison with a little collar around his neck. All the prisoners wear them, which prevents his powers from working. All right? Now, from what I can tell, the Juggernaut's not wearing one. Because if he was, they wouldn't have needed to have a super-duper, really tough cell for him, because his mutant powers wouldn't have worked. But it seems that they didn't put a collar on him, maybe because they couldn't get the helmet off. I don't know how the helmet's attached, and if he can't get it off, that's unsanitary. Okay. But they put it around Wade Wilson's neck, which means his mutant powers gets turned off. His mutant powers are healing. Without it, he's a cancer-ridden invalid. They kill him by doing this. And turning off someone's power, knowing it will kill them, probably violates their constitutional rights. But, you know, the MCU government, the government in the MCU is pretty fascist. So maybe they just don't care if they kill Wade Wilson. I thought that was kind of horrible. But the Juggernaut escapes, there's a big fight and everything. But I started thinking about, how could you take out the Juggernaut? Now, in the film, they use electricity, in a somewhat novel manner, to stun him. Which is smart, because I don't think he has any resistance against energy attacks. I mean, he's much tougher than an average human, but other than that, he has no special resistance to energy. So that would be a great way to do that. Or, you know, you could telekinetically pick up the Juggernaut, and suddenly he's not on the ground, and he can't touch anything, and suddenly he's completely helpless. Now, I talked to a nerd friend of mine, and she commented to the fact that when I asked, can Sue Storm, Invisible Woman, put a force field around part of a person? So, for example, if I had this knife in my hand, could she put a force field around my hand to make the knife now useless because it's just a big round ball. I can't do anything with it. And my friend Amy said that in the comics, she believes that she has actually done that with a guy with a gun in his hand. So, if Sue Storm can put a force field around part of a person, and if she's done it once in the Marvel Comics, it's good enough for this video. If she can do that, then she just puts a bubble around Juggernaut's head. You wait 5 minutes and Juggernaut falls down. And if Sue wants him not to get back up, she just leaves that bubble there for about 10 more minutes. And then Juggernaut's not there anymore. But even if she can't put it around just his head, she could put it around his body to very tight amount when he's not moving, pick him up, and again, helpless. Doctor Strange opens up one of those cool teleportation portals under him as he's running, because remember, once the Juggernaut gets moving, he can't stop on a dime. So he just runs right into that circle, zip! Doctor Strange goes to a prison, opens the circle, he falls into the cell. All caught, story done. So the reason I'm doing this is that it's bothered me for a long time the way they have always matched heroes and villains. I've mentioned, Luke Cage going up against a Kingpin. Kingpin could not harm Luke Cage physically, even though in the comics he's shown as being a match physically for Daredevil. Yes, they're both essentially completely mortal, so that they're a good match for each other. And Juggernaut was originally a good match for a number of heroes. And in the comics, he's taken on some big contenders, but who all seem to want to just punch him. And he's taken out some really tough people because they were willing to just fight in his arena, physically. But if you go outside Juggernaut's arena, or outside the arena of any hero or villain, you can take advantage of the fact that, say, for example, Juggernaut can't do anything if he's not on the ground. If he can't touch anyone, he's harmless. Teleportation circles, gas attacks, some kinds of poison. Ant-Man could really mess with Juggernaut. But they don't do that because they want those big cinematic fights. Because that's what people love. Because comic books are soap operas, Greek tragedies, and professional wrestling all rolled into one. And if two guys get into a ring and one guy is almost completely invulnerable, like Luke Cage, it's not going to be much of a fight. And people want that. So I understand why they do it. It irritates me. There are ways of taking out pretty much any character if you get slightly clever. And if you apply a little bit of thought, for example, from someone that's a role player or a comics fan or just creative. If you're willing to think, if you'll excuse my horrible business buzzwords, thinking outside the box, like the one I'm in at the moment, taking out the Juggernaut isn't that hard. And they just didn't do it because it would have ruined their story. It would have messed up their narrative. They would have had to become more creative. Like Loki taking over people's minds, that's hard to fight. Not impossible, but it's harder. That's a subtler attack. It's also not particularly cinematic. It's very dramatic in that moment, but there isn't a lot going on. He touches somebody, bingo, now they're his vassal. So, I understand why they did it in the film and why Juggernaut is like he is, because they like those big cinematic fights. But there are ways of taking him out. So, I've laid down a few different ways I think the Juggernaut can be taken out. Lifting him off the ground, force fields around his head or his body, teleportation circles, energy attacks, gas, poison, etc., etc. If anyone else can come up with some creative ways of taking out, say, a big hulking dude like Juggernaut, tell me. I think that would be interesting. Or if you know the comics far better than me, which is not hard, how have they taken out Juggernaut in the past? So let's talk about how to fight someone taking advantage of their weaknesses as opposed to just attacking them in their strengths.